I'm Ed Adams, and this is the Weekly Genealogy Toolkit, the podcast that helps the new genealogist get the most out of their research time and avoid the most common pitfalls. There are a lot of ways to do genealogy. Even among successful professional genealogists, while there are accepted standards, there's still some pretty considerable variability in terms of how they go about meeting those standards. So I'll tend to look at a lot of methods, and even if they aren't something that I would do, I'll usually just shrug and say, you do you. But today I want to talk to you about something that if you're not doing, you're doing it wrong. Don't sweat it though, because I think we all start out doing this wrong. But there's good news. You can fix this today without any work on your tree whatsoever. This is a mistake that doesn't involve errors really finding their way into your tree so much as a mistake that keeps you from discovering as much as you could. The mistake? Failing to search the catalog. All the major genealogy sites make it so easy to search for our ancestors. I think the first time I hopped onto Ancestry Library Edition, I just searched for my grandfather's name and an estimated birth date and nothing else. The next thing you know, I'm looking at census documents and draft cards. The ease of just banging a few characters into your keyboard and clicking search followed by pages and pages of amazing sources triggers like a dopamine hit that likely attributes to the economic viability of these major companies. If I'm just going to do some quick top-level analysis on a project, I'll do the same thing. It's a very good way to quickly identify what's readily available for this person. But if that's all you're doing on these sites, you're leaving a lot undiscovered. When I first started out, this was all I was doing. I'd get frustrated when I felt like I hadn't found everything that should be there. I started playing around with the way I searched. I tried searching for various spellings of the name. I'd adjust the sensitivity for things like birth date. I'd put in neighboring counties. And truthfully, these are all good techniques, and I'll probably do an episode at some point about how to maximize your search skills. But it seems like oftentimes, fiddling with my search would either net me an entirely different and usually less applicable set of results, or with very similar results in a slightly different order. The reason for this is because these sites use powerful algorithms to try to figure out what you're looking for and then sift through massive repositories of data to find it. These algorithms are really good at determining what you're looking for, which is why sometimes changing our search up a little bit doesn't seem to result in as much change in the output as we'd like. But the bigger problem is the scale and variety of the data sets that the algorithm is searching through. To give you a sense of the scale, Ancestry.com has over 60 billion, with a B, records that amount to about 10,000 terabytes of data. Other sites are dealing with similar scales, albeit definitely less than Ancestry. Within those 60 billion records are censuses, birth records, marriage records, military records, and the list is endless. Each of those records contains different information recorded a different way for different purposes. This makes trying to search the entirety of Ancestry's collection a challenge. It's a challenge that I'll admit Ancestry makes look pretty easy, but you can find more, trust me. The secret is to stop using the top-level search that the sites make so easy to find, and go instead and search the catalog. On Ancestry, you can do this by clicking on the search button at the top of the screen and then on Card Catalog in the drop-down menu. On MyHeritage, it's under the Research drop-down, and they call it Collection Catalog. And on Family Search, it's located in the search menu in a drop-down simply labeled Catalog. It should be fairly simple to find no matter what site you're using. Here on Ancestry and MyHeritage, you'll be greeted with a browsable list of record collections, organized either by size or by date added. But they'll both let you switch how the list is sorted. Family Search instead presents you with just a search menu, which you can use to find these same types of results. I'd really prefer that they make it a little bit easier to browse like Ancestry and MyHeritage, but they do have a link to a wiki page on how to use the catalog, which is pretty helpful if you've never used a card catalog before. You'll notice that the items listed in the catalog aren't specific records about Tom Jones or anything like that, but they're the names of the record collections. I like to start here to quickly weed out extraneous information that I'm not looking for. This is particularly helpful when you're dealing with someone for whom there's a lot of information, or if you're working with someone who has a very common name. This is also the first stop when you're doing your research planning. If you're working on finding out where your great-grandfather from Cincinnati was born, try searching for Cincinnati in the card catalog. Here you'll find a list of sources that contain the word Cincinnati in their title. Not all of these may be about Cincinnati, Ohio, but the majority of them will be. You can get a lot of help building your research plan by just skimming through that list. You'll find sources like this one, a response to the sentiment, "The Old Time Printer," at the annual meeting of the Cincinnati Tapathete, January 17, 1898. This is precisely the kind of source that doesn't fit neatly into one of the algorithm's bins, and unless you just happen to stumble upon the perfect search term combination, you're not likely to ever see that in the general search. But if your great-grandfather was in the printing industry in Cincinnati, this might be a pretty good resource for you to look at. Continuing with the Cincinnati example, let's say that my great-great-grandfather, John R. Smith, died in 1866 in Montgomery County, Ohio. But the family legend has it that at some point he lived in Cincinnati and was originally from somewhere further east. Searching for John R. Smith with his death date and a location of Cincinnati provides nothing useful. It's just a mess of various different John Smiths, and I'm not sure if any of them are the one that I'm looking for. But if you find the source, History of Cincinnati and Hamilton County, Ohio, using the card catalog, you can click on that source and then just search that source alone. If you use the exact same search terms as used in the general search, the second result is a complete biography of our John Smith, complete with birth date, location, spouse's name with maiden name, children's names, and more. Now, it's an authored source, and you'll definitely have to figure out where this information came from, and maybe you can't fully trust it. But when looking for someone named John Smith, this is the kind of result that gets me doing an end zone dance. If you haven't already, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that at some point, you're going to come across an ancestor for whom you have an 1880 and a 1860 census listing, but nothing in 1870. Could be any census year, really. But if you're just using the top-level search, you're going to feel like some of your ancestors just got skipped. Try going to the source, in this case, the 1870 U.S. Federal Census. Now you have a search form for just that census. Start playing around with the name spelling or location in this search form, and you can control for the source, allowing you to get much better results faster than if you fiddle around with the search terms at the top level. This is a great way to get a sense of how many people of your target surname lived within a particular area. You can do that through the top-level search, but this is just much easier. Ancestry separates out the ability to search the card catalog by keyword instead of title. So if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, you can still search for a keyword and get a good result. For example, if you search for railroad in the title search, you get 21 results. But if you search for a keyword of railroad instead, you get 59 results. Not every result has railroad in the title, but they should all have some information pertinent to railroads. You can use keywords in conjunction with filters to really narrow things down that you're looking for. For example, if my ancestors lived in predominantly Baptist area of South Carolina in the early 19th century, I could filter the catalog by location using South Carolina, and then use Baptist in the keyword field. I only get 10 results when I do that, which is actually a good thing. Those are 10 resources that are likely to have good information that is of use to me. I'd probably start with the Cross and Baptist Journal from 1834, that just looks interesting to me. One of the hardest things to do in American genealogy is to cross the seemingly impenetrable Atlantic Ocean. There are many reasons for this, but one of them for many of us is when we cross the Atlantic, the records are now in a different language. So searching the way we searched within the United States isn't going to net us many results. If you at least have an idea of what country your ancestor came from, try filtering the catalog by location for that country. For example, let's take Ukraine. First of all, seeing that there are 58 record collections with some Ukrainian applicability is exciting, but if you start clicking on some of these record collections, you'll notice that few of them, if any, are in English. So if your ancestor's name is Palamarchuk, typing that in may not find anything in any of these records because it may not be written that way. You might get lucky, but if you spell the name as a Polish, German, Russian, or Ukrainian would spell it, you might be surprised what you're going to find. I have even found in some cases where a single event like a birth was recorded in multiple languages in a record, and there was more information in one language than in the other. This is also a great place to do some initial research if you don't know where in the mother country your ancestor was from. Ukraine's a big place, so if you don't even know where to start, just try searching for the surname in some of those location-filtered records collections and look at where those people lived. There's no guarantee that your ancestor came from the place with the largest concentration of their surname, but Occam's razor would suggest that I start looking there if I have no other clues. There's really a wealth of information in some of these records that you're only likely to find going through the catalog. Honestly, there's plenty more reasons to spend time searching through the catalog, even if you just start browsing through without actually looking for anything. I have no doubt that you'll be amazed at some of the records collections that you find, and at the end of the day, spending some time in the catalog of any genealogy repository will help you spend less time searching and more time researching. So take some time today and start looking. If you find something interesting, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter @TheWGTPod. If you're finding these tips useful, think about leaving a review. I don't know if it really helps the growth of the podcast, but it can't hurt, and it helps my motivation to see that I've achieved my goal, namely helping you with your family history. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. Next week, I want to talk to you about an absolute hidden trove of information that many beginning genealogists have no idea exists. I want to talk about unindexed records, the sources that you'll never find by inputting a name in a search bar. They've got some of the best information, and getting comfortable with them will have you feeling like you're the Sherlock Holmes of genealogy. Have a great week, and I'll see you then.